Story 1. The Basement Apartment. I was 22 when I matched with a woman named Marcia on a dating app. She seemed quiet, shy, maybe a little awkward, but harmless. After a week of chatting, she asked me to come over for coffee. I suggested meeting in public, but she insisted I come to her apartment first because she felt anxious in crowded places. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She lived in an old building downtown. The halls were dim, and her apartment was in the basement level. The second I stepped inside, I noticed something was off. There was barely any furniture, no decorations, no TV. Just a mattress on the floor and a table with neatly stacked notebooks. She locked the door behind me. I laughed nervously and asked why she locked it. She said it was for safety. We sat down and talked, or at least she talked. She kept asking strange questions. Things like, "Do people know where you are right now? Has anyone ever disappeared from your life? Do you think anyone would come looking for you?" I froze. I told her I had to leave, but she moved in front of the door and said, "You didn't finish answering my questions." Her tone changed. Her face changed. I noticed one of the notebooks slightly open, and when I glanced at it, I realized every page was filled with names, dates, and cities. She noticed me looking and slowly closed the notebook. Then she smiled. The hallway outside suddenly filled with footsteps, maybe neighbors, and for a split second she moved away from the door. That was all I needed. I yanked the door open and ran. She didn't chase me. She just stood there in the doorway, smiling. Later that night, I went back on the app to block her. Her profile was gone, and so were all the other guys she had matched with. Story 2. The Night Drive. I met Elena during my freshman year of college. She seemed sweet, energetic, fun, the kind of girl who loved late-night adventures. For our first date, she suggested we go for a night drive along the outskirts of town. The roads were empty, no streetlights, just trees and darkness. She barely talked during the drive. She just kept staring ahead with this blank expression. At one point, she suddenly asked, "Do you trust me?" Before I could answer, she turned off the headlights while the car was still moving. The world went black. I yelled at her to stop, but she started laughing. Not playful laughter, the kind that sounds broken, unstable. She whispered, "Isn't it beautiful when you don't know what's in front of you?" I grabbed the wheel and forced the car to the side of the road. We sat there in silence. She slowly turned to face me. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated, like she hadn't blinked in minutes. Then she said, "Most people panic when they realize they're not in control." Her voice didn't even sound human anymore. I jumped out of the car and started walking down the road, trying to call a ride, but there was no signal. A few moments later, I heard the engine start behind me. Her headlights turned back on, and she began slowly driving toward me. Not fast, just following. I ran into the trees and hid until I finally got a signal and called a friend. By the time I came back with help, the car was gone. 2 weeks later, I found out Elena had withdrawn from school. No one knew where she went, or if she ever came back. Story 3. The House at the End of the Road. I met a woman named Daniela through mutual friends. She was quiet, polite, soft-spoken. The kind of person everyone said was nice. For our first date, she invited me to her parents' house for dinner since they were out of town. The house was far out in the countryside, at the end of a long dirt road. No neighbors, no signal. The inside of the house felt abandoned, dusty. Most of the rooms were empty except for the dining room, where she had already set the table for two. We ate in silence for most of the meal until she asked me something I'll never forget. "Do you believe some people are meant to disappear?" Before I could respond, I heard a sound, a faint knocking from somewhere beneath the floor. I asked her what it was. She ignored the question. The knocking grew louder, more desperate. I stood up, shaking, and demanded she tell me what was going on. She sighed, stood up slowly, and said, "Some people come into our lives for a reason." I ran toward the front door, but it was bolted shut from the outside. She didn't chase me, she just watched me struggle. Then, the knocking stopped. The house fell completely silent. And for a moment, she looked disappointed, as if something had changed. Suddenly, the back door slammed open and someone shouted. It was a neighbor. They had seen my car from the road. Daniela's expression drained instantly. The neighbor yelled at me to get outside, now. I ran. The police were called, but when they searched the house, there was nothing in the basement. No room, no door, no evidence anyone had ever lived there. The house was officially listed as abandoned. Daniela was never seen again. And sometimes, I still wonder what or who was knocking beneath that floor.